I just had the most wonderful experience, which is that an experience you only have maybe once or twice in your life, really. I was sitting here, just hadn't thought much about this. This is how I was sitting, but when Peter started playing, I realized it was no accident that I was sitting and I holding this piano, and you don't often get to, hug a piano when someone's playing like that, and feel that right into your whole body. Because I was just picking up the whole thing right through the wood of this piano. And it was like, I got to hear Peter's wonderful music as I've never heard it before. Wow. So I get to write in my newspaper article that I hugged Peter's piano while he was playing. Hi, everybody. I'm Neale, and you're not. Actually, you are. I asked Peter if he'd be willing to just get me a little microphone, because I usually speak rather quietly, and I didn't want to have to shout. Can you all hear me pretty well up there? Wonderful, wonderful. We're making a major decision right now in this world, on this planet. And each of us are making that decision individually, even as we are deciding collectively, it seems to me. And the decision that we're making, it feels to me, may be the single most important decision of our lives. In fact, I'm going to take the qualifier off. It not maybe, it is the most important decision of our lives. And as I experience it, and as I frame it when I talk about it, it feels to me that the decision is, who am I? That we are deciding as a species and as individual members of this collective that we call humanity, who we are. And it's not a small decision, and it's not a decision that very many people even confront or choose to explore in their lifetime. The people in this room, perhaps, are consciously exploring it, but if you go out on the street out there and talk to people at the shopping center and ask them if they're exploring the question, who are you? Or in the first person, who am I? They may look at you as if you were from Mars, because it simply isn't a question that most people are asking consciously in their lives, although it is a question that everyone is answering. And that's what's fascinating about the question. The question, who am I, is being answered by all of us every day, every moment. But it is only being asked by a tiny percentage of us in a conscious way. Life, it seems to me, is continually asking the question, who are you? And we are continually answering the question, who am I, with everything that we think and say and do. And yes, in my experience, it gets down to that level. We are answering the question with everything we think, even, tracking our thoughts throughout the day, as well as with everything that we say, and more obviously, perhaps, with everything that we do. When we see life in that context, which most people do not, it feels to me that our whole life changes as we give ourselves actually an entirely different raison d'etre than we have ever had before, a whole different reason for being. than we ever had before. In conversations with God, I was told every act is an act of self-definition. Now, I have to be honest with you, before my conversation with God experience, I never thought of life that way. It just simply didn't occur to me that in every moment of my life, I was defining myself, deciding who I am, expressing that decision, and demonstrating my choice about that. It just didn't occur to me to contextualize my life in that particular way. Because it didn't occur to me to contextualize my life in that way, I was making that decision unconsciously, haphazardly, without any sense of purpose or direction, because I thought I was up to something quite different. When I was a younger man, I had been given my marching orders by my culture, my family, and by life itself. So at 22 or 23, when I embarked on my great journey, gosh, it doesn't seem that was so many years ago, does it? I mean, it just seems like yesterday. What happened? I was just 22. Somebody tell me what happened. So for those of you who are in the younger part of your life, and by the way, anything under 60 is the younger part of your life. For those of you who are still in the younger part of your life, and I see some of you who are quite young, don't miss a moment of this. Because I want to tell you, my young lady, back there in the second row with the hair streak, the time between now and the time you're my age will go so fast, you will not know what happened. So use this time more wisely than I used these same years in my life. I had no idea what I was even doing here. I thought it was about get the girl, get the car, get the house, get the job, get the kids, get the better job, get the better house, get the better car, get the grandkids, get the better job, get the promotion, get the office in the corner, get the plaque on the door, and then finally get the gray hair, get the retirement watch, get the cruise tickets, get the illness, and get the hell out. And that's what I thought the whole business was about. That was it. And I was somewhere around 2/3 of the way through that game. I got the girl, and then I got the girl, got the girl, got the girl. So I married, and then I married again, and then I married a third time, and then I married a fourth time, and a fifth time, and a sixth time, and a seventh time.
Wow.
You think I'm making this up, but I'm not.
Did not realize that.
Yes, you didn't realize that. You'll get your money back. Anybody who's scandalized by me does not get their money back. So, but at least nobody could accuse me of being an emotionally unavailable male. Because I didn't date, I simply married. But, because I was absolutely committed to commitment. Can you hear that? I really didn't. I mean, honestly, you're going to think this is crazy of me, but I just didn't want any casual relationships. I thought if I was going to be that serious with someone, and intimate and part of their daily life in a very important way, we needed to be married. I didn't want to. I'm an older person. I just didn't want to play around. Well, I'm not sure whether would have been better to play around for 20 years or just have 7 wives. It's just kind of like, let's see, 7 wives, play around. But I've been there and I've done that, and I had careers. I was a newspaper reporter and a radio station, a disc jockey, and I was a radio talk show host, and I worked for a public school system as a public relations person. Nobody wants to hear that. I'm just telling you that I had this career after career after career after career. Lady after lady after lady after lady, house after house after house. I lived in all these different places, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Annapolis, Maryland, all over the place. And I could never quite get it. My life was just one person, job and place after another, trying to get traction somewhere, and it was because I didn't know where I was going. How can you get anywhere when you don't know where you're going? You have no sense of where you're going. And that's why the first line of my last book, I had a book come out in October called The Only Thing That Matters. And the first line of that book is, and I'm speaking for myself here, that's how the line came right through me, 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. And I wasn't at the age of 65. That's okay. That's God calling.
It's from Japan.
Do you know how I know that it's God calling? Can I tell you how I know that that's God calling? Do you know how I know that's God calling? You got to pay attention to me. You know how I know that's God calling? Because God is the only being in the universe that can get through on the telephone that's been turned off. So I didn't know where I was going, and I was one of those 98% until I was way, way, way past middle age, still trying to figure it out. What's it all about, Alfie? What am I doing here? I achieved, which was, thank goodness, knock on. I achieved my life dreams over and over again, and I would make a new life dream because I always wanted to be in the radio. Good, that's good. We'll mark you down for that. I always wanted to be in broadcasting. I got to be, a disc jockey. I always wanted to be a talk show host, got to be a talk show host. Always wanted to be a drummer in a band, got to be a drummer in a band. Always wanted to be a professional photographer, got to be a professional photographer. The list goes on. Mm-hmm. So God was saying, interesting, God was saying yes to everything I was saying yes to. It was wonderful. I always wanted to be in a movie, play a lead role. I got to play a lead role in a movie that nobody saw, but I did the movie. You saw it.
It was a great movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
Yeah.
The only person that ever saw, you and I both watched it. But but I had the fun. I just had the fun of it. Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and getting on the trailer and being on location. They're putting the makeup on in the makeup trailer. I did the whole thing. I did. I played that. So I got to play these great games. But so what? By the way, this talk really is going somewhere. Because I'm getting to the decision that we all are invited by life to make. Who am I? Because after 60 plus years of this kind of stuff, I still would wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I did that, I did that, I did that. So what? So what? I couldn't even feel, at loose ends or sad because I didn't have a life of success. In fact, it was the other way around. Everything I tried, I was successful at. I became managing editor of the newspaper and all that. So it wasn't even that I was sad about never getting what I wanted out of life. I was getting what I wanted out of life. That's when you know that something's amiss. When you're getting what you want out of life and you discover you don't even want that. Mm-hmm. Then it's like, okay, what is it that I don't fully understand here, the understanding of which would change everything? There's something I don't get. And then I had my conversations with God experience. Because I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just said, I don't get it. I don't get it. Surely there's got to be more than this. And then, in my experience, God started talking to me. and brought me information that answered every question I ever had about life. Every question. Questions I never even dreamt existed. Actually inspired me to ask certain questions so that I could get the answer. And the answer to the ultimate question, who am I and what's this all about, was given to me as well. May I be presumptuous enough to share with you the answer I received. It may not be your answer, but it is the answer that I received. "98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter because they don't know why they came here. And even those of us who know why we came here, and by here I mean why we came to physicality, even those of us who know why we came here, of that group, the largest number don't know how to achieve why we came here, from my observation and from my interactions with people. I certainly didn't, even after I learned why I came here. So let's go back one step. I'm told we came here in order to express and to experience at the highest level each moment allows our true and real identity. That is, we came here to experience ourselves as divine, because we each of us are an individuation of divinity. And that God's purpose, I'm told, in creating physical life was to allow that which we call God, and we call it by a dozen and many more other names, Yahweh, Brahman, Jehovah, Allah, and other names as well, that this thing that we define as divinity itself chooses to experience itself, not just merely to know itself, but it wishes to know itself in its own experience. Now there's a problem there, because that which is God could not know itself in its own experience for a very interesting reason. Because there's nothing else but God. Nothing else in existence. That all things are one thing, there's only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. Now, if you're the only thing there is, and there's nothing else, then you can't experience yourself, because there's nothing else against which to measure or to express who you are. Do you understand? Does anyone have a question about what I just said? Can you see why that would be a conundrum? Yeah? Because if you want, well, I'll give you an example, real simple one. Let's suppose, when I was a kid, I wanted to be 6 feet tall. I wanted to be 6 feet tall so bad because my brother was 6 feet tall. He came home from the Air Force on furlough. He looked magnificent in his blue uniform, you know, and I thought, I said to my mom, when I grow up, I want to be like Wayne. I want to be 6 feet tall. And my mom said, well, sweetheart, maybe you will be. You just eat your, you know, what is it Popeye eats? No, not Wheaties. Spinach. Can you believe that? So, I mean, who the hell eats spinach, actually? But anyway, oh, of course, you look like a spinach eater, but in any event, just having fun with you. So anyway, well, you know what? I grew up and I got to be exactly 6 feet tall. I was not 6'1.5", not 5'11". I was 6 feet tall. Talk about life proceeding out of your intentions for it. But just imagine if I lived in a world where everything was 6 feet tall. Every tree was 6 feet tall. Every blade of grass was 6 feet tall. Every piano was 6 feet tall. Every chair was 6 feet tall. Every other person was 6 feet tall. And everything in existence was precisely 6 feet tall. Well, if everything in the entire world was 6 feet tall, then my being 6 feet tall would have no way to be experienced. I could know myself conceptually as 6 feet tall, but I could not experience it because there was nothing other than 6 foot tallness. Therefore, I would beg. You said you wouldn't tell them that I was here. See, the word got out and they're coming to get me. I got to finish this up fast. Therefore, I would beg for anything to show up in my life that's not 6 feet tall. Even though 6 feet tall is the preferred experience, I would actually beg for an experience that was not preferred so that I could have the preferred, you understand? So, which is why, by the way, darkness comes into your life the moment you decide you are the light. Incidentally, the moment you say, I am the light, watch the darkness come in. not as some villain in the piece, but as the right and perfect contextual field, allowing yourself to know yourself as the light. Therefore, when you are surrounded by darkness, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. And bless those who oppose you, and love your enemies, for they have been brought to you for a singular purpose, to allow you an opportunity to know yourself experientially as who you really are. And so we say, thank you, God, thank you, God. In the moment when we imagine ourselves to be attacked or opposed in any way, for yet one more opportunity to announce and to declare, to express and to fulfill, to become and to experience who we really are. The Master, of course, knows this. The Master also knows that the other, how would I put this, players in the game, that is the other souls who are collaboratively creating our combined experience, are not aware of the agenda of how they are fulfilling our agenda. They're not consciously aware. At the soul level, they are, by the way. We're all collaboratively creating our collective experience at the level of soul. But at the level of mind, which is very limited, most of us have no idea of the unwitting role we are playing in the lives of others. And the Master knows this. So the Master sees that those who think they're persecuting him don't even know what they're doing. They're not even aware. It was put rather eloquently, I thought, by one particular individual who said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Now, when we understand what we're up to, you can see how it would dramatically recontextualize your entire life. Suddenly, whether we make the beauty shop appointment on Tuesday at 4 becomes rather irrelevant. And we don't lose our cool because the car broke down last Wednesday, or whatever is going on with us. We begin to see life as a remarkable series of events set up by life itself in perfect order, allowing us to fulfill our soul's agenda at the next highest level. There can be nothing more wondrous in the human experience than that. But if we don't know what we're doing, we'll miss the moment. The times will go by. We'll have no idea what's happening or why. We'll even imagine that things are being done to us rather than through us. May I share with you, please, that it's impossible for anything to be done to you. All things are done through you, collaboratively, with all the other souls that are involved. And when I learned that, when God told me this, these things that I heard in my conversation with God, you do understand, were radically different from the way I was holding life before. Radically different. Completely the opposite of what my religious upbringing brought me, what my philosophical upbringing brought me, what my societal messages were. Just totally other than how I thought life was. But suddenly I was given a deep understanding of what was really going on here. And I realized that we're all collaborating. Even those, this is hard now, this is difficult. Even those who have chosen to play the role of the villain in the piece. Conversation with God famously said, may I ask, let me just back up here. How many of you have read one or more of the Conversations with God books? Okay. That was kind of what I was afraid of, actually. So the truth is, you already know every move I'm going to make up here. I feel like Madonna. I feel like Madonna's fourth husband on his wedding night. I mean, I know what I want to do. I'm just not certain I can make it interesting. Think about that. So you've read the books, you understand then that one of the most famous statements in the books is Hitler went to heaven. And when that statement came off the pen, honestly, and no exaggeration, I dropped the pen. I had no idea, by the way, I had no idea when book one was coming through that anyone would ever see it. Never occurred to me. I was not writing a book. I was having an experience that wound up in the hands of publishers, and I can tell you the story if you're interested, but I had no intention of writing a book. I was just journaling, personal journaling. But even personal journaling, when it came out, Hitler went to heaven, I dropped the pen like that. Now, we are carrying things just a bit too far. Talk about things that utterly violated my thought about how it is, what's true and what's not true. It was bad enough when earlier in the dialogue I had been told there's no such thing as the Ten Commandments. That was a tough one right there. Much less there's no such thing as right and wrong. Much less there are no villains and no victims and all that stuff that was coming through. But at least conceptually at some level I could think, well, maybe way out there somewhere that might at some point be true. But Hitler went to heaven? How can I justify that and still believe in the God of my understanding? Because the God of my understanding is a righteous God. And surely there must be some place in the universe for justice to be done. And that place is in the afterlife, where we all go after we die, and we are judged, and then condemned. Well, in your case, clearly, but not actually in mine. We are either condemned or we are judged to be sufficiently innocent of any major offenses to join, God in heaven. I mean, that's the myth. That's how it's supposed to go. And that's how I even as an adult, I'm not even going to try to lie to you and say that as a kid I thought that. Even as a grown-up, I thought, well, it's something like that. Maybe the fine print isn't exactly that way, but I thought it was something like that. There's got to be some kind of a system of justice after all. Hitler didn't go to heaven. I mean, come on. Except he did. For an interesting reason. There's no other place to go. Hell does not exist. There's no such thing as the devil. And if there was, he'd be coming here saying these exact same things to tempt you. I've been told that. So, listen to him. You see, he is the devil. I've been called that because the devil would say exactly that. But I've been told reliably by the God of my understanding that the devil, the whole thing is just a because we have made God in the image and likeness of us. We can't imagine a God who would be magnanimous enough, magnificent enough, and here's the key, needless enough to be able to do a thing like forgive Hitler. So we imagine that God, you see, has needs. Among other things, he needs us to obey him. And when you say, well, how, and what do we have to do? What does obey him look like? That depends on what religion you belong to. So if you're in one religion, you have to wear a burqa and whatever. And if you're another religion, you can't eat pork. And if you're another religion, you got to bow 3 times to the east. And if you're another religion, you can't eat fish on Friday. When I was a child, I grew up as a Roman Catholic, and I was a very devout young Catholic boy. In fact, I was an altar boy. And what are you smiling at? I actually was an altar boy. I was an altar boy. But the first McDonald's opened in my neighborhood. How many of you are old enough to recall the first McDonald's opening up in your neighborhood? Anybody? Two of you. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Of course you do. So the first McDonald's opened in my neighborhood, and all the kids in the neighborhood were down there because we had to try out this thing called fast food. Yes, they were going to give away hamburger, French fry, and Coke combinations to the first 500 people who showed up on grand opening day, and that was the first hamburger, French fry, and Coke combination I ever had in my life. Clearly, it was not the last. So we're walking away, because they give it the hamburger in like 10 seconds, which was new for us. It was a brand new thing. So we'd like a hamburger, please. Zip, right there, put it right in your hand. I'm like, wow, that's really. So we're walking away eating the hamburger, and if I spit it out. The kids, why is it that bad? I said, no, it's not that bad. It's not that good, but it's not that bad. I realized, my God, it's Friday. Oh my God, it's Friday. I ate meat. And because I was serious about my Catholicism, and I was an altar boy, and I raced home, and my mom took one look at me, and she said, she saw I was pale. She said, "Are you okay? Did somebody hit you? Did you fall? Did you hurt yourself? Are you all right?" I said, "No, I'm fine, but I ate meat on Friday. I ate meat." And my God, my mother just held me to her bosom real close. She said, "Oh, sweetheart, it's okay. I'm sure God understands." Poor dear, my mother just didn't have the heart to tell me at that point in my life that God simply didn't give a damn. Yeah. And so I went to confession. I did the whole thing that you do when you're 9, and Father, forgive me for it's tough to go to confession when you're 9 years old, because you have nothing to confess. That week I had something to confess. So I was, because you had to go every week. The nuns made you go every Saturday, whether you had something to confess or not. So you'd go in there half the time, you'd make stuff up, What are you going to do? You sit in the thing, so you'd make stuff up. But this time I actually had a sin that I could confess. I ate meat. The priest gave me absolution, told me to, say three Our Fathers and 3 Hail Marys, and asked me if it was any good. So he was curious about McDonald's. So now it's flash forward, 10 or 12 years. I'm now 20 years old, and I open the religion page of the Milwaukee Journal, and it says, headline: Pope declares eating meat on Friday no longer a sin. I'm sorry. The Pope just decides that as of now, I thought, well, what does God say to all those people who had all those hamburgers for all those years? And died and went straight to purgatory. What does he say to them? Sorry. Seemed like a good idea at the time. And that's when I realized. That was the day I realized we're making it all up. My God, we're making it all up. The whole religion thing, we're making it all up. And I carried that clarity forward until my conversation with God, when it was confirmed that, in fact, we're making it all up. That does not mean that religions do not have any value for us. I'm not saying that. They do have great value, which is why they've lasted so long. They're simply not literally to the letter true. And with regard to the idea that there's a hell and a Satan, they're specifically not true. So Hitler went to heaven because there's no other place to go. But for an even larger reason than that. This is tough now. See if you can handle this. He went to heaven because he did not commit any offense. See, he simply came and allowed himself, at the soul level, to put on the cloak of the villain, big time, of course, major villain, to provide us with the deepest, blackest side of the human experience, that we could announce and declare who we were in the contextual field against that. That is, he was part of the process by which life itself demonstrates itself and recreates itself anew. And he understood what he was taking on, that is the soul of Hitler, when he took it on. So is it true of the Colorado movie, shooter? And all of the so-called villains in life, even the guy in London the other day who did that horrible thing to that soldier. See, listen, if you're serious about spirituality, you have to ask the question. You just have to ask the question. As horrendous as that event in London was, we have to ask the question, what does God do when that guy who did that crime shows up, at the pearly gates, so to speak? When he is in direct contact with that which is divine, that expression that we call God, what does God say? Well, now you crossed the line. That was way past, you're going to hell. And the guy says, I thought there was no hell. He said, well, there isn't any, but we made it up just now, just for you. See, we needs must ask the tough questions. If there's no hell, what happens to people like that guy in London? What happens to Hitler? Is there no sense of justice in the universe? What's going on? How does it all work? What would God say to that young man? I'm going to say something startling to you now. So see if you can hold this in your experience. God said to me, every act is an act of love. It is impossible, given who and what you are, for you to not act as a demonstration of love. Every act is an act of love. That's why it doesn't have to be forgiven. Because not only does God not have to forgive you for acting out of love, furthermore, she understands perfectly well the distortion that your mind entertained and held as what was in your twisted mind the correct demonstration of that love. But nobody has ever done anything in the history of the world that was not sponsored by love in the history of the world. It's merely a matter of what they loved, how they loved it, and how they thought was the only way they could demonstrate it. That has to do with the distortions of the human mind and our utter and complete misunderstanding with regard to who we are, who everyone else is, the purpose of life, and the nature of divinity itself. When those four subjects are clarified in the human experience, all of life on this planet will change, and we will never, ever, ever again see another incident like we saw in London a few days ago, much less a Hitler. But until those four questions are resolved in the minds of human beings everywhere, we will continue to suffer. As Shakespeare put it, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, the horrible events that we've seen on this planet. The four questions again: who am I? Where am I? What is the nature of life? What is the purpose of life? Who is this thing we call God? And what is my true identity, and who is everyone else? Once we're clear who everyone else is, once we're clear that we are all one, that there's no difference between me and you and I are the same, then we would no sooner do what that guy did in London to the other man than we would take our own hand and put it on a chopping block and chop it off with a meat cleaver. We simply wouldn't do it, because we would never hurt ourselves that way. What allows a human being to act inhumanely is that human being does not understand that every other human being is absolutely part of who he is. Separation is the gigantic illusion of humanity. When that single illusion is resolved and dissolved, everything on this planet will change. It started with a separation theology. In the earliest days of humanity's awareness, God told me, we decided that God was over there, that is, those of us who even believe in God, and we're over here. And so we decided that we were separate, not one. And a separation theology would be Not so bad if that's as far as it went. But unfortunately, that's not as far as it goes. Because a separation theology creates a separation cosmology. And it did so in the history of humanity. Understand that a separation theology did not begin with the invention of religion. It began in the caveman days. You understand? God explained this all to me in my conversations. If you've read the books, you've read this already. Are you interested? Mm-hmm. That's 3 of you. How it all began was in the caveman days, as human beings began to become self-conscious, that is, become self-aware, stuff was happening, and they began to notice themselves in relationship to the stuff that was happening. First, they saw the first caveman saw his reflection in the pool, and he put his hand up, and the guy in the pool put his hand up, and he did this, and the guy in the pool did this, and he realized he was looking at himself. That was the seed of self-awareness. Other forms of animal life on this planet, as you know, don't have that. A dog looks at himself in the mirror and barks at himself because it doesn't know that that's him. But we have self-awareness, self-consciousness, and we've had it for a very, very long time, since the earliest days of the caveman era. Now, here are the cavemen sitting all around a campfire and a bolt of lightning, and thunder and lightning, and one guy says to the other guy in caveman language, which means, "Did you do that?" The guy said, "Well, I didn't do that." So he asked all around the campfire, "Who did that?" And nobody would admit it because nobody did it, which meant that somebody else must have done it. Somebody who's not around the campfire, maybe in the next clan. And they investigated around, they realized that nobody in the 100-mile radius did it. That meant there was somebody else, something else, larger than all of them. And the first idea that there's something other than us that we can't control, out of our control, seeped into the consciousness of human beings. Lightning that started forest fires, tornadoes, and hurricanes, and things happened then just like they happen now. The earth shook and there were earthquakes just like that then. And stuff was going on, or even droughts and the rain and so forth. And then something interesting happened. In one of the clan areas, there was a drought that went on for like days and days and days and days and days. And they tried to do everything because at this time that they had envisioned a God who had to be appeased because they thought that God was just like the head of the tribe, the head of the clan. He has to be appeased. So God, they didn't call him God, of course. They just called him, but they just got that, had to be appeased. So they said they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what do I do? So they sacrificed lambs. They put, and they even went so far as sometimes in some areas, their own children. They just did all this kind of ritual sacrifice to try to get the God, because they had to figure out a way to get the overall power to do what they wanted it to do, or at least stop doing what they didn't want it to do. Are you following this? So they got into the whole this rituals thing. But then one guy decided he'll try something. He grabbed a twig off a branch, and he started shaking it. It had dry leaves, made a little bit of a rattle noise. He did a little bit of a dance. And by golly, as luck would have it, the rains came. He was forever known as the Rainmaker. And suddenly it became clear to the clan that if you do certain things, God will do what you want him to do. Now, metaphysics is metaphysics, whether it's 2013 or, caveman days. It works the same way. What you believe is what you produce. So if they believe the guy did this 3 times out of 5, in fact, it happened. And thus, religion was born. And a separation theology has created a separation cosmology. That is a cosmological way of looking at life that says everything is separate from everything else, which we hold to this very day as the nature of things. And a separation cosmology produces a separation sociology, that is a society that constructs itself deliberately as separate entities interacting together. And a separation sociology produces a separation psychology. That is a psychological way of looking at life that says, you know what? It's nice to be in the room with you, but in the end, I'm here and you're over there. And I'm not you and you're not me. We have a separation, and a separation psychology ultimately produces a separation pathology. That is pathological behaviors of self-destruction. And that's where we are today. Pathological behaviors of self-destruction. Going after what we love in ways that are so distorted, the distortion growing out of our thought that I'm here, you're there, I have nothing to do with you. In fact, you're opposed to me, and the only way to get what I love or to protect what I love is to oppose you. In fact, I may even have to kill you. And so, the Christians went on what they called crusades. Pope Gregory said, go out there and bring all the people into the Catholic Church, and if they don't confess in Christ, kill them. And the crusades went on for a few years, about 50 years. No, about 100. Actually, about 200. I'm sorry, 300. My history of it. 300 years of Christian massacre. Because if you didn't confess in Christ, off with your head. Is it a little understandable why even today in some of those Mideastern countries where this was happening, there's a little bit of bitterness? And then came the Nation of Islam, deciding that they were going to be the ones. And they, went ahead and did their and the whole thing. We don't have to go into history. What we notice, however, is that out of our separation cosmology, growing out of our separation theology, we have created a world that is ultimately pathological. What changes it? A simple shift in our notion of who we really are. That brings me to the end of my comments tonight on this subject. I know that the people in this room are already aware, or at least I assume you are, that we are all one. That there is no separation. That I am an aspect and an expression of divinity, as are you. That means that we are one and the same, simply different flowers in the garden of the gods. Essentially unified. We all understand as well in this room, I assume, that we are all aspects of divinity. That we are not simply, created by God, but that we are God, expressed individually. You know what's funny? You know what's interesting about this? People get that about stars and birds and flowers. There's not a one of us who hasn't looked up at the night sky on a beautiful, clear night and looked at the canopy of stars and said, oh my God, look at this. If that isn't God expressed, what is? There's not a one of us who has not seen an eagle in flight and said, oh my God, look at this. Look at that. If that isn't divinity expressed, what is? There isn't even a one of us who has not looked into the eyes of a newborn child. In the moment of her first smile, my granddaughter was born 3 weeks ago, and I held her in my arms moments after her birth. Came back the next day, 3 or 4 days later, and I held her in my arms. Grandpa's here, Grandpa's here. She looked up and just did this little smile. And in that instant, you realize God is real. Right here, in the eyes of that infant. The only thing I don't get is that the same thing is true when I look in the mirror and see my own eyes. When the day comes that I look in the mirror and see in my own eyes, not theoretically, not conceptually, not philosophically, but actually, that I'm looking into the eyes of divinity itself. On that day, I look into your eyes and see the same. Do you understand why we can't look at each other? We don't dare look at each other for more than a count of 5? Because if we do, it's all over. All separation is over. It's not about male, female, black, white, gay, straight. Doesn't matter. If I look into your eyes for more than a count of 5, it's over. That's why we don't dare look at anybody. We have to look away. Try it sometime. Watch yourself. Get on an elevator. Watch. You'll do anything. You'll read the damn health and safety notice rather than look at somebody in the eye on the elevator. You can tell when you get off the elevator the shoes that everyone was wearing. Because we have been trained, don't look me in the eye. It's too intimate. It's so intimate, we can't even keep our eyes open when we're making love. Because the eyes are the windows of the soul. Now, I assume that everybody in this room already knows everything I've said. I've said nothing new to anybody. The question is not whether this night brought you anything new. The question is, what are you going to do about it? You're going to go back to your life Monday morning, get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the better house, get the better car, get the better job. Get the kids off to school, get the kids off, and for God's sake, don't miss the hairdresser appointment Tuesday at 4. Or are you going to be clear what you're doing here? And use every single moment of your life to advance that agenda. The agenda of the soul. Be careful with this stuff. If you were to actually do that beginning Monday, your whole life will change. All that you were struggling for will fall on you automatically, because you'll no longer be trying to get that raise, that new car, that other life partner, or whatever you think that you need to get in order to be happy. You will be the source of such deep and abiding happiness in the lives of everyone whose life you touch, that just by you touching their life, they will think, my God, that's what's going on here. That's what this is all about. And the world will respond without you having to even make an effort. So I invite you tonight to remove yourself from the 98% of people that are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. And be clear before I say goodnight. That doesn't mean change your whole life, quit your job, go to an ashram. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about living your day-to-day life in such a way that you move through the world with purpose and intention. And your purpose and intention is twofold. One, to express in each individual moment of now the grandest idea you ever had about the most magnificent identity you could ever embrace about who you are, and have that expressed through you in whatever gifts are yours, whatever it might be, something as simple as a smile. To say nothing of the way you happen to touch a bunch of ivory keys on an instrument. And the second part of the agenda, after you've totally expressed your gift in the grandest way without worrying about who's going to like it, who's going to buy it, who's going to agree with it, who's going to say yes, just for the heaven of it. And the second part of the agenda is then to make sure that everyone whose life you touch, every single person who crosses your path tomorrow, is made aware by the crossing of your path of who they are, is returned to themselves, given back to themselves, simply because they happen to cross your path. There's an old saying, no one comes to you without a gift for you in their hand. God said, actually, it's just the other way around. I said, really? God said, yes, take this down. And I took it down. God said, nobody crosses your path without you having a gift for them in your hand. Why do you suppose they were sent to you? The question is not whether you will have a gift for them in your hand. The question is whether you will give it. So when you leave here tonight, and when you go out into the world tomorrow, remember that every person who crosses your path has come to you to be reminded of who they really are. And they will be reminded of that by the very way you interact with them. They will remember themselves because of you. Unless they don't. And that choice is yours. But, should you take me up on the invitation, you will find that your whole life will be a conversation with God. This guy has such a gift. We all do. All of us do. And when you hear him play that piano, I want you to see your own gift in the notes that he plays. His gift is here, and it's marvelous. And your gift is where it is, and it is just as marvelous. So let his music be music to your ears, to remind you of your magnificence. Because if his music doesn't touch you in a way that reminds you of your magnificence, there's no reason for him to play it. Good night, Mom. Thanks for coming. I thought it might be fun now, just for a few minutes. I picked out just a couple of quotes from the material Conversations with God. And Peter and I thought it might be fun if I just read just a few lines from this as Peter offers his gift, just to bring us to a place of unifying all that's been said here. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is wonderful, wonderful Peter Cater. God, I love this guy's music. Breathing in and breathing out and relaxing. And allowing yourself to be fully present. Right here, right now. There is something very unusual occurring in your life right now. You can feel it. And tonight is an extension of that feeling. Be clear that you have created this night just for yourself. If you're not careful, it could look like Peter and I created this night. But tonight, the music and the words are yours. It's the music of your heart, the words of your soul, spoken to you through you. What is occurring in your life right now is that your awareness is growing. And now you are hearing its voice. What is occurring right now is that your soul is expanding. And now you are feeling its force. What is occurring right now is that your life itself is becoming at last what it was always intended to be. You are dropping away here and now. Every false thought you ever had about yourself. Every inaccurate, small idea. Every notion of fear or upset. Every idea that you have ever held. That would say the lie about you, and that would allow you to imagine that you are less than who you really are. And so we call this moment holy. We call this moment sacred. We call this moment our time. The time we've been waiting for so long. The time we have yearned for. The moment in which we call forth the highest notion we ever held about who we are and why we are here. This moment we will never forget. And after this moment, we will never be the same. when it feels good and right and proper to do so. Allow yourself to be fully present in this time and in this place. Knowing that tonight you go forth in a new way, if you choose. Our world will and can change, I promise you. I promise you. All we need is you. And Peter and I are going to close the evening now. This is a reading from the book Communion with God. Remember always that yours is a world of illusion, that nothing you see is real, and that you may use the illusion to bring you a grand experience of the ultimate reality. Indeed, that is what you have come here to do. You are living in a dream of your own creation. Let it be the dream of a lifetime, for that is exactly what it is. Dream of a world in which the God and Goddess in you is never denied, and in which you never again deny the God and Goddess in another. Let your greeting, both now and forevermore, be Namaste. Dream of a world in which love is the answer to every question, the solution to every problem, the response to every situation, the experience in every moment. Dream of a world in which life and that which supports life is the highest value, receives the highest honor, and has its highest expression. Dream of a world in which freedom becomes the highest expression of life, in which no one who claims to love another seeks to restrict another, and in which all are allowed to express the glory of their being in measure full and true. Dream of a world in which equal opportunity is granted to all, and equal resources are available to all, and equal dignity is accorded to all, so that all may experience equally the unequaled wonder of life. Dream of a world in which judgment is never again visited one upon another, in which conditions are never again laid down before love is offered, and in which fear is never again seen as a means of respect. Dream of a world in which differences do not produce divisions, individual expression does not produce separation, and the greatness of the whole is reflected in the greatness of its parts. Dream of a world in which there is always enough, in which the simple gift of sharing leads to that awareness and creates it, and in which every action supports it. Dream of a world in which suffering is never again ignored, in which intolerance is never again expressed, and in which hatred is never again experienced by anyone. Dream of a world in which ego is relinquished, in which superiority is abolished, in which ignorance is eliminated from everyone's reality, reduced to the illusion that it is. Dream of a world in which mistakes need not be shamed, regrets lead not to guilt, and judgment leads not to condemnation. Dream of these things and more. Do you choose them? Then dream them into being. Call them into being. Choose to make the rest of your life a decision to call your highest dream into being. For it has been said before, and we say it again. There are those who see things as they are and ask why. And there are those who see things as they could be and ask why not. What do you choose? What do you ask? What do you say? I started the evening by saying, this is the time of our choosing. I end the evening with the exact same thought. This is the time of our choosing. Choose well. Choose wisely. Choose now.